over his girlfriend? What?
That's the
Help
good
me
thing.
out here.
That's the good
Dudes
thing
be
about
talking
talking.
smack.
Yeah, that's a good thing about talking about Celtics basketball this week is you don't have to actually know anything about basketball. We're talking all soap opera stuff today, behind the scenes stuff, and this is a little bit crazy. From what the media knew, Davis showed up. Davis had a broken finger, so he didn't practice on Monday, and there was no real story as to why it was broken. Just it seemed like it was shady circumstances, and the story kind of came out today. The police report became public, and basically what happened is he got into a fight with his best friend in his SUV after his best friend had made some comments about Big Baby's girlfriend, and whatever happened. Apparently, the friend Sean Bridgewater threw the first punch, and Davis was just defending himself. But long story short, he ends up with a fractured thumb, has to undergo surgery. Now out 6 to 8 weeks, facing disciplinary action from the team. He'll be suspended, which means he'll be given back some of that contract that they gave him in the offseason. And it's a bad situation for a guy who already his role was kind of up in the air about what he would be with this team. He's kind of with the Celtics by default. He thought he was going to be a starter somewhere else. Mm-hmm. No offers came in, despite a number of teams needing some help at the forward position. So he ended up back with the Celtics on a 2-year deal, and he's behind Rasheed Wallace, behind Kevin Garnett, behind Kendrick Perkins. So how is this guy going to get on the court for the kind of minutes that he thought he was going to be getting? And this isn't going to help the situation at all. He actually had to issue a public apology. Not had to, but I don't know if they forced him to or if it was his own decision.
Probably a good idea to, nonetheless.
Yeah, he issued a public apology to the fans and to his teammates, apologizing for his actions. It's one of those things. It's one of those things that happens. If he didn't hurt himself and injure himself and become a detriment to the team in that regard, nobody would care. It's just, I don't know. He's young. He's a kind of goofy guy.
Is this akin to the old Chappelle Show skit where when keeping it real goes terribly wrong? Is that what this is?
Well, this was. I mean, these two are, from what I can understand from the stories that are coming out, Bridgewater and Davis are the closest can be. They were high school teammates. They've known each other since they were little kids. I don't see this as bad behavior on his part. I don't see this as him being with the wrong crowd. It's just something that happened, and it's unfortunate that it did. And what will really matter here is how Davis takes us going forward.
Yeah, we're not looking at another Sebastian Telfair here.
No,
this is
not
just
at
sort
all,
of a bad, seemingly isolated incident that is regrettable, but they'll move on. No one's getting released over this.
6 to 8 weeks out with a thumb injury.
Yeah.
That's for a guy who you were hoping would be carrying over what he did in the playoffs.
And he was fantastic, and I think he's one of those guys too that seems to play better the more he plays.
Absolutely, and that's why he was hoping to get a starting role or at least a bigger reserve role than he probably have in Boston, because he did realize that he needed that time on the floor. But maybe we could be speculating this, and maybe now he's just realized how to get the most out of his game, and he wouldn't need those type of minutes to make that type of contribution
anymore. He can go from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if he can go from 0 to 60 at all.
No, that's the hope.
Yeah.
Or 0 to 45 or whatever however he chugs along.
Obviously,
he's like an old Volvo.
Obviously, early in the season, so the ramifications aren't as heavy as they could be if this happened at the end of the year. But what does this do to the Celtics bench situation in depth? Actually,
if anything, at least in the early going, because I don't know how much it's going to matter to have a team that deep early on, especially looking at their schedule. Obviously, starting tonight in Cleveland, then playing Charlotte tomorrow night. I think it's really going to help Rasheed Wallace get acclimated to how he's going to work in this rotation. It's going to give them a chance to get him on the floor for heavy minutes early on to make sure that they have that on-court chemistry going. And then once Davis is healthy again, you can bring him in and start pulling back Garnett, pulling back Rasheed, and saving them for the postseason.
What's up with Rondo? Is there a Saturday deadline for? Kind of fill us in on that.
It's what it is they have until Saturday to sign him to a long-term contract extension, or else he becomes a restricted free agent next summer. Which, if you're Rondo, you're kind of salivating at the prospect of that, because so many teams have cleared cap space in the hopes of landing a LeBron James, a Dwayne Wade, a Chris Bosh, and there's only so many of those names to go around, and there's more teams that have big cap space, and he'll be able to land the kind of contract he's looking for. Jeff Goodman of WEEI.com and FoxSports.com, he was reporting that the Celtics offered 5 years, and $45 million to Rondo, so $9 million a year, and that Rondo's camp is actually looking for something more in the $55 to $65 million range for the same amount of years. So he's thinking, according to his agent Bill Duffy, he's thinking that he should be paid amongst the top 5 point guards in the league. That's arguable because of the dearth of good point guards in the league right now, and the fact that Rondo has proven that he can be a triple-double threat for this team, as he did in the playoffs last year. The problem is he's looking at what he's done this last year. The Celtics are looking at what they'll probably get from him on the back end of that deal when the big three aren't here anymore, and when you'd be paying him max money to have to be a max player, and he's not going to be that type of player. He's not going to be the star of your team a la Chris Paul. They're going to need to have supplementary pieces once the big three leave town, and I don't think Rondo is going to be the kind of guy that can lead a team like Chris Paul does.
Yeah. No, but you're right.
Rondo
He's
disagrees.
Not,
so.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the top point guards under 28, say, let's just put a random year on it, he's certainly in the conversation, but he's nowhere near Chris Paul or Deron Williams, who are going to be, or Rose in Chicago, who's going to end up probably being the best of them all if he even a little carries over what he did last year.
I've got some of the numbers. It's kind of ridiculous that he would think that, at least in this financial climate and with the kind of finances the team already has, to think that they're going to commit this kind of money to him now. Because you got Jason Kidd making $21.37 million. That's an anomaly. He's a guy who had to lead his team, and he's old, and he's on the end of that deal.
Yeah.
But you got Gilbert Arenas, $16.2 million. That's a guy that's been injured too much. Paul makes $13.65. Mike Bibby, $14.98. And Steve Nash, $12.25. So these are all guys who could basically be the centerpiece of their team if necessary, and I just don't think Rondo's that kind of guy.
And if you look at Nash, Kidd, and Bibby, those are all guys at the wrong end of their career, and that's the last time they're making that money.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that they're not, and especially I think in Nash's case, not that they cannot still be all-stars, but it's not the same. They're kind of they're being paid for what they had done for years, whereas Rondo is entering year 4.
Yeah, if you kind of look at Rondo's situation, 5 years, say take the Celtics offer, 5 years, $45 million. So you're making $9 million a year, and that's pretty good scratch for a guy who's going into his 4th year in the league. That's not one of these superstar players. And then when he comes out of that, he's 23. So when he comes out of that deal, he'd be 28, just entering the prime of his career, and that's when he can get one of these max deals, either from the Celtics or one of these other teams.
It kind of seems a little bit like the Deion Branch thing, where he wanted his money and he wanted it now.
Yeah, that I think $45 million is enough financial security for any one person, and then on top of that, to say that you have a chance to earn yourself an even bigger contract down the line when maybe the financial climate of the NBA and the world is a little bit better.
Yeah.
All solid points.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I mean, what do we think is going to happen here? What's happening? Give us a prediction. What's your call?
I'll tell you what's going to happen here is Rondo's going to end up being a restricted free agent at the end of the year. He's not, and by being a restricted free agent, the Celtics have the right to match any offer that he receives. And I think what Danny Ainge is playing here is the fact that he thinks what he thinks about Rondo, and he thinks that a lot of the other GMs in the league think the same thing. So while they may have the money to offer him a max deal, they're not going to. So I think Ainge is kind of pretty firm in the notion that they can match anything that Rondo might get, and then it becomes a matter of how much can they. Is there going to be bad blood by the fact that they didn't work something out longer, and how's it going to be going forward?
Do you think he's mature enough to get past that? If, let's say, he doesn't get the deal he wants, or let's say someone like New York offers him... New York doesn't get LeBron James, LeBron stays in Cleveland, and they don't get Wade and they don't get Bosh. They offer him something like 5 years, $45 million, and the Celtics match, and now he's a Celtic again. Is he mature enough to get past that? Because that's been their biggest knock on him, is that he's not that mature.
I can't grade the maturity of Rajon Rondo because I don't know enough about him as a person. Even in the limited amount that I see him as a person, he's too introverted. He's too he's just so even keel all the time that you really can't read into who he is as a person. It's all these stories that we hear that come out about Doc Rivers telling him his teammates don't like playing with him. The fact that you see Garnett, Pierce, these guys talk about him in a little brother mentality when they're speaking to the media, but I guess behind the scenes there's been struggles, and so. I can't really judge his maturity. I would have to say, based on what we've heard, it sounds like he might be one of these guys that just thinks he's an elite player and wants to be recognized as such. And